what does this relationship between bricks and clicks, as it were, the modern IT economy and the traditional economy, and you span it in your own job, what does this mean for India?
Thank you, Martin. I'll make 3 points in this first 4 minutes. First point is, yes, you very rightly said, we need bricks and clicks. In our strategy, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, he has put a very good emphasis, the right balance between investment-driven growth, where the brick and mortar industries also find exactly the same traction as the digital and the IT-related, IT and technology-related industries. How did that happen? That happened because a very wise choice was made, especially during the pandemic. Instead of splurging money on pure consumption, the way many other economies have tried to come out of the pandemic, Prime Minister Modi made a very clear choice that very focused consumption, but a huge emphasis on infrastructure investment. That investment strategy has helped us, and today we are out of the pandemic at a good, healthy growth rate of 6.9% and a very moderate inflation of about 5.8%. Traditionally, we have had inflation ranging from 5 to 7%, so 5.8% is purely as per the long-term trend that we have in the country. This has really helped balance the economy and create a template which is going to be good for the next 10 years. On the clicks side, huge emphasis on the India Stack that was started in 2016 when Prime Minister launched the Digital India program. Now, again, a very innovative way of doing things. Unlike big tech monopolizing everything in some geographies, and unlike government doing everything in some other geographies, we created a public-private partnership model in which the government put its public fund in creating a very robust platform. Then everybody else joins. So I'll give one example, the payment platform. Payment platform, government started, government formed, created the platform. More than 300 banks joined it. Insurance companies joined it. E-commerce companies joined it. More than 800 startups have joined it. And 1.2 billion users have joined it. The net result is, in last December 2022, the digital payment transactions amounted to $1.5 trillion annualized basis. And that is, if you compare the total of US digital transactions, UK, Germany, France, combine the 4, multiply by 4, it's more than that. So it's huge. And it's making such a big difference in the economy because it empowers the poorest of the poor, it empowers everybody, and people get access to technology which generally was in the domain of rich and the powerful. The third point I would like to make is bricks and clicks, again, a combination of policies which have really helped us bring electronics manufacturing to the country. 10 years back, it was negligible. Today, it is $87 billion electronics manufacturer. Just iPhone exports will be, the smartphone exports will be $9 billion this year. And the iPhone 14 is now made in India. The supply chain is shifting. This one is made in India, right? So supply chain is shifting and deepening component ecosystem is coming to the country. A very clear focus on bricks as well as clicks is giving us a good, sustainable growth path. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it underlines a view I've held for quite a long time, but I've obviously, as you probably know, followed India for quite a long time, since the 70s, and it underlines what I think is a very important point, is that over the next 10 or 20 years, it's pretty well overwhelmingly certain that India will be the fastest growing of the big economies, and it's very big. So I think anybody who hasn't in business and in other areas thought very, very seriously about what India will mean is really missing the point about where we are in the world. I think by now most people have got that, but I think you brought this out very, very clearly in this payment platform, which I know about, is an extraordinary thing. What, in different ways, has been described as a sort of catalytic role for government to provide, particularly what are essentially, well, in different ways, public goods aspects of the development process. So providing the infrastructure and the funding for a supercluster is an obvious example. You're providing the platform is an obvious example. And is that really how you see it? Your role is catalytic in this way, and where does that take you beyond what you've done? So you think about the future. You expect and hope for very clear. The Prime Minister's made this clear: rapid growth, and therefore lots of further innovation. So what further catalytic efforts do you think are justified to push the economy into these new innovative directions?
So I'll give two very specific examples of how we created the public-private partnerships. One is from the BRICS economy, second is from the CLICS economy. From the BRICS economy, let me give the example of the latest 180 kmph train that we have developed. Now, a train running at 180 kilometers per hour, there are about 8 countries in the world which have that kind of design capability. It's a very, very complex machine. Believe you me, I'm an engineer by training. It's very difficult and very complex piece of engineering. How did we do it successfully in India? How did we design the entire thing, manufacture it in India? We, from the government side, first created a very large demand for it. So a very large order, so that anybody who wants to put time, effort, and resources in it should get a sufficient headway, sufficient pathway for taking that product forward. Second, we created the basic framework of the design. Instead of making it a prescriptive or that kind of specification where you are typically buying from somebody, we created a design specification which is more like, okay, you do one thing, I'll do 2 things, you do 3 things, together we will design it. So that requires a lot of creative thinking. That's not very easy in public sector. I can vouch for it. It really requires a lot of creative thinking, and that's where our Prime Minister's resolve comes very clearly forward. And together we designed it, and the trains which are currently running on that technology, they have run like, if you cover the entire Earth, 58 times periphery. So these are very good stable trains from the BRIC economy, right? BRICS economy. From the CLICS economy, developing a complete 4G, 5G telecom stack, because telecom is the backbone of entire digital economy. So, and there are only about 5 companies which have the complete end-to-end telecom technology stack. So, and people all over the world are looking for good, trusted solutions. So we put our software engineers and our hardware engineers together and started the development process. What normally takes 5 to 6 years, we thought of compressing it in a time frame of 2.5 years. And the solution has come out very well. Again, we took the core, which is the brain of the telecom network, the core network, in the government sector, in a public sector company. And the radio network, we opened it up to the private sector. So you can have multiple number of radio network players. They all talk to the same core. Just like the payment system, we developed the platform. So the core is here the platform. You can have multiple number of players in the radio. So sorry for being very technical on this. The net result of these 2 examples is, within next 3 years, India will emerge as a major export house in major exporting country for telecom technology and train technology. So that is the private-public partnership that we do. And point that you made, Martin, is very important. How do we de-risk the whole process? Private sector, if you burden private sector with risk, then 1, they will shy away. 2, they will add costs. So it's very important, and government can take many of the risks which private sector cannot take. So how do we balance that out? If we create such such contractual structures, such constructs, then I think we have a very good story forward. And we intend to, in India, we intend to replicate these experiences in multiple sectors, including clean energy, power equipment, in other heavy equipment, in mining equipment, in many more sectors, in defense manufacturing. Multiple sectors we intend to keep this growth momentum forward.
This is essentially a much more sophisticated and subtle approach to industrial policy than we're used to, in the sense that you're trying to create new capabilities in your country, and I think it's true of you both, but you're trying to do it you're not through a public sector enterprise, but through creating an enabling environment in which the public sector facilitates the development of the private sector and plays this vital catalytic role. That's what you're trying to do.
Exactly.
How difficult, India has, easy or difficult has it been to get the bureaucracy to do that, or have you actually had to create a new one?
See, the challenges in public sector are, it's public's money, it's not my money or shareholders' money, right? So one has to be very careful about every dollar that you deploy. And we have very strong public auditor in our country. We have a very robust constitutional framework. So every dollar that we spend has to be done in a very transparent manner. So transparency is fundamental. Having competitive way of selecting your partner is fundamental to it. So creating structures and constructs which enable transparent, hassle-free, and competitive way of selecting the partners is the key to this.
My question is, for low-income markets, how do you choose between bricks or clicks when you don't have the necessary resources to do both?
I think these are very good. Perhaps, though this is not ideal in any way because it's very different, but 30 years ago, 40 years ago, India was a low-income country. It isn't now, of course, and it has developed a huge IT sector and so forth. But if you look back sort of where you were in 1975 or 1980, and you look at what's come, what are the lessons that you think should be drawn from other, obviously mostly smaller, smaller countries, for how you develop this? Because it didn't come from nowhere, the Indian Institutes of Technology and all the rest of it. So say a little bit about this. I'm afraid there isn't much time, but that would be, what advice would you give?
The role that technology can play, it can accelerate migration from low income to middle income in a very significant way. I can give multiple examples, but one example which is very close to my heart, and our Prime Minister has given a very clear target on this. How do we make credit available to a person who's very, very micro business person who requires a $10 credit for 2 days, 3 days cycle, right? It's not an easy problem to solve. If we apply our minds and if we put the entire India stack that we have developed together today and get the right construct. So today we have a solution where the banks, which would be generally fighting for a $100 million loan to a large corporate group, would be making an equal effort at a fraction of the cost to acquire a customer who's seeking $10 loan for 3 days. And that's amazing. I mean, there is nothing more powerful in economic transformation than providing credit at a fraction of a second. You say, I need this credit now. Within 1.5 minutes, the credit is sanctioned and the amount is actually transferred to your account. So create that kind of solution, and any low-income country can phenomenally come out of it. And from India, our Prime Minister's message is, any country who would like to take this India stack, it's a solution which is good for developed countries, it's a solution which is good for low-income countries, it's a solution which is good for middle-income countries, and it's an open source solution. Please adopt it. This is our way of giving back to the world.
So the conclusion, which I think is very important, is go and talk to the Indians. I mean, I thought we'd get there, and I think there's actually a lot to learn from what they've managed to do. It's been quite extraordinary. I mean, in the last 30, 40 years in development. I'm afraid I have to stop this. I found it actually a very fascinating discussion in many different ways. But to me, the most interesting thing is the way countries are developing completely new forms of public-private transport partnership, and in a sector where public goods, in economic sense, public goods ideas or issues are so profound, this can work. Immensely powerful. We've seen this in clusters and in other platforms and so forth. But I think it's also an area where we all need to learn from the countries that have made progress and share this knowledge so we actually get development and growth out of it, and not just rent extraction. So thank you very much, panel. I thought it was wonderful. Thank you.